From Austin to Alabama, justice served or denied, where civil rights and corruption collide. This week on TCLN, I will be examining the DOJ's role in 3 specific news pieces that are trending in mainstream media. Number 1, the Moody Center scandal in UT Austin. I'm also going to talk about the cancellation of DEI initiatives and how it thwarts a civil rights agreement. And last, I'm going to talk about the DOJ's role in firing the Maureen Comey, which is the person who was the federal prosecuting attorney for Sean Combs Diddy, also for Ghislaine, and for Jeffrey Epstein. Tune in this week. I got the goods for you. It's not gossip, but it is tea, right here on TCLN, where I educate to elevate, and we go from the situations to the solutions. After all, it's not just news. It's the why behind the news.
Never stop, forget it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top.
Yo, no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving boulders. Now we ain't getting posterized, we out here making posters, and we ain't got nothing to hide. We move forward like soldiers.
Never stop, forget it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top, yeah.
You know I'm always
So we're going to do something a little bit different, right? You know how everybody says, imagine if. Well, we're not going to imagine today. What we're going to do is we're going to do something old school. I want you to put yourself in someone else's shoes today. And this is where we're going to go, right? Lowndes County, Alabama.
Never stop, forget it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top.
Yo, no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving boulders. Now we ain't getting posterized, we out here making posters, and we ain't got nothing to hide. We move forward like soldiers.
Never stop, forget it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top, yeah.
You know I'm always
Welcome back to the Creative Leadership Network, known as TCLN, where I educate to elevate and we go from the situations to solutions. Now, what I'm going to do in this situation, in talking about Lowndes County, I'm going to start with the law. The reason why I'm going to start with the law is so that we can understand how the DOJ works in this particular situation, right? So if you saw my first video, you know and understand I was speaking about UT Austin and the Moody Center. And then you got an opportunity to see how the antitrust law works and what the DOJ involvement is, right? So this week I am hitting on the DOJ, their power, their influence, and their authority, and how it works in our mainstream media news, right? So that's what I do. I bring the current events to TCLN that are happening in our news, and I just break them down so that we can be educated. Okay, so let's get started, guys. Let's go with the law. So this is what you call sanitation laws. Once I read these laws, then you will understand what the situation is in Lowndes County. So under the 2024 Code of Alabama, Title 45, Chapter 43, Article 17, Part 2, and you guys can look it up if you like, the county commission has the authority to regulate sewage systems in incorporated areas. Homeowners must connect existing privies, septic tanks, or water closets to public sewer systems if available within 90 days of notice. So if the property owner fails to connect or fails to carry out what they're asking and requesting of them within 90 days, Lowndes County can actually do it for them, but it would be at the owner's expense, right? And they would place a lien on your property until you pay them back, okay? The problem with that, understand what I'm saying, is that this particular lien is going to be superior to all other liens. That means that if you don't pay them back, you know how liens go on property, right? The problem with this is that also it can be charged as a misdemeanor. That means that you can be liable for a crime. Do you understand that? If you don't take care of your sewage situation. Now, what is the situation? The situation in Lowndes County is that for a very long time, they've been operating by a system known as a homemade system. So basically, what they would do is they would get out the sewage, right? And they would dump it in the woods or they would dump it in out areas. And that's pretty much where the sewage would go. And things, of course, they started getting charged. If you charge up to $500 per time you are charged for this particular situation, if you're caught doing it, right? And also, it can cause jail time. So the problem is that some of the citizens were either being locked up or fined steep fines that they could not afford, right? And so what ended up happening is that there was an investigation that was done previously by the DOJ or just by the city and the county in general. And what they found that this was a civil rights violation. That's what they found, right? So what ended up happening, because the majority of people and residents that are in Lowndes County, Alabama, it's a rural area, the majority of them are Black citizens. So they found it as a civil rights violation, right? The DEI initiatives and all that kind of stuff, they were able to go up on the initiative and get some funding, get some things done. And they were beginning to start to fix this problem, right? As they started to fix this problem, according to the Trump administration, I don't know if I don't think he was in particularly thinking about that situation in general. But in overall, according to him, he was stating that DEI is very unfair. What needs to be fair is that all Americans are judged by their particular intelligence, their ability. You understand what I'm saying? And if they can do the job or pass the tests in colleges, everything that had to do with DEI, right? And diversity and the initiative that came with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's so much more bigger than that because different races got up under it, different sex groups got up under it. As a matter of fact, reports came back that white women benefited from DEI the most, especially in corporations, because they were able to get things that benefited them more than even Blacks were benefited with DEI. You understand what I'm saying? So that's pretty much the gist of what was going on. So when Trump canceled those initiatives, that particular civil rights issue that they had was tied to a particular initiative. So what ended up happening, let me give it to you because I want to make sure I'm giving you the facts, right? So let me dig in here and get the facts for you. So you guys hold on. So what ended up happening in May 2023, the U.S. Department of Justice, which is the DOJ, and the Health and Human Services reached an interim resolution agreement with Alabama Department of Public Health. It resulted in an 18-month federal investigation under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which found that enforcement, including fines, jail threats, and property liens against residents who could not afford functioning septic systems disproportionately impacted by Black and low-income communities in Lowndes County Department of Justice. So that's what they originally found, right? Right. Pretty fair. Pretty okay, right? The settlement included several reforms. So these were the reforms: suspending criminal penalties and liens for residents unable to afford septic systems, conducting public health assessments and awareness campaigns in partnership with CDC. Because what happened is when they were throwing out all this waste, right, in the wood areas and these other areas, because they could not afford to connect these septic tanks or whatever they were requesting of the city and state, what ended up happening is that it was causing hookworms. So hookworms is a deadly parasite that basically the United States has pretty much eliminated everywhere. And it does deal with a lot of sewage and waste, right? So that was another thing that stepped in. Also creating a long-term public health and infrastructure improvement plan, which is known as the PHIIP, right? Prioritizing repairs and installation of septic systems for at-risk households. And then establishing community liaisons and outreach roles to ensure engagement with local residents, Alabama Public Radio, the Department of Justice, Department also other areas and entities in the area who was able to assist, right? And keeping the people informed. So it included all of this. Also, nonprofits had got on board. They had been helping. The news had been reporting it. They were helping because they understand that it was a huge problem and still is. But they were beginning to fix it because of this particular civil rights agreement that was done. Now, when it was canceled because the DEI initiatives, anything associated, I'm sorry, with DEI initiatives were cut, right? So that's what cut that off. So in April of 2025, the termination happened. So on April 11, 2025, the DOJ had officially terminated the settlement agreement invoking the Trump era executive settlement agreement and order of 14151. Again, that's the executive order of 14151, which directed federal agencies to cease any initiatives tied to diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So when I thought about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm honest with myself, honey. You know, we think, and then sometimes we don't look at the bigger whole picture, right? So I never knew in my lifetime that sewage and environmental areas would be tied to DEI like that. I just never thought about that, right? I never thought about that in terms of diversity and equity, because in the media, or at least in our mainstream and on social media, it's always about race and sex and the rainbow and the LGBT and abortions and this and what people make it out of. You understand what I'm saying? So, and we would think in our mind, you like who you have sex with is your business. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? As far as race, you know, we understand race and equality, but some of the other things that people would be fighting about, we'd be like, okay, what are you talking about? You know? So when you look at DEI on a bigger scale like that, you wouldn't have never, well, at least I wouldn't, I ain't gonna lie to you, but I wouldn't have never thought that a whole city or a whole rural area, put it like that, who needed such help and that was in dire's need, that they would be cut off like that. They were getting the help and then they're cut off. You understand what I'm saying? And originally some of them were being locked up. They were being fined and locked up. Now remember, if they did come in and help you, they would put liens on your property. If you can't afford it, you know what that means. They got a right to take your property, boo. So that's in and of itself is a form of just theft. I don't care what nobody say. That's just theft, right? But you never think about it on that scale, right? But you know me, this is TCLN Network, and we're not just about highlighting the situation. You understand what I'm saying? I'm about the solutions too. That's what we're about, right? So of course, I'm gonna talk about the solutions a little bit later, and basically what Lawdnes County can do, what other places have done in these situations when DEI wasn't even spoke about concerning it, or an agreement, civil rights agreement wasn't even in place for it. There were other people who done other things that were able to solve similar situations, okay? So I just wanted to give you a little bit about that so you can understand the DOJ and its power, its authority, and its influence. You understand what I'm saying? And to think about that you can go all the way from dealing with people who are doing criminal acts and terrorist acts and all that kind of stuff, to all the way to something called civil rights and an initiative, and have the power to relinquish something because someone says that DEI will not be, and I'm gonna give you the correct statement of how it was actually said so that you will know what was actually said. So this was the Trump administration. This is a quote that came from the Assistant Attorney General, Harmeet K. Dhillon. So Harmeet K. Dhillon. And he said the DOJ will no longer push environmental justice viewed through the eyes of distorting DEI. The DOJ will no longer push environmental justice viewed through a lens distorting DEI. So again, guys, there you go. But when you look at it in totality, you understand what I'm saying? You got to look at things in totality, right? And so that brings a lot of things into perspective. You understand what I'm saying? And so I would say to the DOJ, to the assistant uh, attorney who stated that, to the Trump administration, and to Lowndes County, I would say to you that if that was you and that was happening in your backyard, you would immediately act. Ain't no ands, if, and buts about it. Ain't no such thing as your backyard funky, stinky, corrupting hookworms. You wouldn't even tolerate that. You would absolutely make sure that the U.S. federal government stepped in and somebody did something. There's no way you would have tolerated that. So I would say to you, we do understand and know that that is a predominantly rural area of majority Black people. You understand what I'm saying? You have got to do better. You got to do better. You got to do better by the land. You got to do better by the people. You got to do better by the resources. You got to do better. So I did a little bit of research because I was like, surely you can fix this problem without DEI. All over the world, people fix sewage problems all the time, problems and environmental problems all the time that has nothing to do with DEI. So surely this project would not stop because of that. So I went and dig a little bit digging. I said, and I asked the question, right? I started doing a little research. I said, well, who else has had environmental problems or sewage problems, or what other cities and what other states and what other counties, you know, and who was able to fix things that wasn't tied to DEI? What funding did they get? Who helped out? You know, and sure enough, it's always out there, right? Because you got all the other states that are not living like that. So surely, and it's definitely not tied to DEI.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top. Yeah.
So I went and did a little digging, and this is what I would say to you all. This is what I would leave you with, okay? Number one, I also want to leave my audience with this. Dense clay, rich soil that makes the traditional septic tank systems fail. So it's due to this dense clay and rich soil, right? 60 to 80% households rely on straight piping. So again, straight piping is a homemade ditch system that channels raw sewage into yards and into wood areas. Now, if you guys want to, you can just go to YouTube and you can look up all the news coverage on Lowndes County, Lawdnes County, Alabama, and sewage problem, and you will see all the information you need to know, right? And but this is what was happening. And so when that was happening, the problem again is that the residents were being fined fees, even jail time for these sanitation laws. So at the same time, they're not fixing it, and then they expect the poor to fix it. And when the poor cannot fix it, then all of a sudden it's your problem and you're fined in your jail. You know that that's a violation in and of itself. That's why they were able to hit it with the civil rights, and they went up under it to get it was some initiative going on up under environmental and DEI, and that got canceled out, right? That initiative. So they was able to no longer to support that anymore. So now they're back at the problem again. Even though they've gotten some help in the county, they're back with this problem again, right? Now, let me do this because again, this is causing parasites and it's causing the place to be really funky, and people are going through all these things, right? So I was like, surely no city will just tolerate that. No state, no city, no none of that, right? So I said, well, let me do a little research to see. So I said, let me do a little research to see what can be done. How much funding do they need? Who can provide that funding? And what can they do? Now, I want to stop and say this because I wouldn't have never found out about the story if it hadn't have been in the news, right? So the number one thing I want to say, and this is what I mean, guys, when I say don't look at news as negative. You know, It's not good to look at, oh, somebody dying, killing every day, blah, 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 blah. But you can take news and educate yourself and do research and be very powerful, right? So what I did is I saw that in the news and I was like, that's interesting. I want to talk about that on TCLN, right? And so what ended up happening, I said, well, how much funding do they need? You know, because that's what the initiative was for and that's what they cut off. Well, how much funding do they actually need? How much can the state do? How much can the state itself of Alabama do to help out with that? How much can the U.S. federal government help out with that? Trump administration, Lowndes County, DOJ, Environmental Department of Justice. So here you go. Number one, the system is failing, not the people. Okay, so that's number one. Let me read this off to you. The Lowndes residents are not lazy. They're not lazy. They're not, you know, just trying to break the law. They can't afford what you asking them for. You understand what I'm saying? It's a rural area. The people don't have the money. Some people have houses, but sometimes they can't afford these things. You understand what I'm saying? And they need help ASAP. ASAP. Flush the excuses down the toilet. It needs help ASAP, right? Like I said, if it was you in your home, you would immediately act. There's no way you would tolerate that. Money, no money. Honey, you be marching on Wall Street. Y'all better do something. You wouldn't handle that, right? So now, that's number one. Acknowledge that. They're not the problem. The people who need to fix it is the problem, okay? They're being denied their rights for real. Whether you want to associate it with DEI, civil rights, or not, the point is they're being denied human basic rights, okay? Number two, this can be fixed. Acknowledge that it can be fixed even without DNI. Just acknowledge that. The Trump administration ended a civil rights settlement that was fixing the crisis, but the federal tools still exist. USDA, FEMA, EPA, ADEM all have the money and the mandate and the power and the influence to act right now.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top. Yeah.
All of you do. To act right now. This isn't about ideology. It's about infrastructure and dignity, okay? Number three, the math is simple. It's simple. So Lowndes County got about 5 million, right? 5 to 10 million, right? We know it can't fix the entire problem. But who got some more money? Y'all got some more money. That means y'all can fix it, right? So the math is simple. They need about 25 or at least 30 more million that they can end the crisis and just stop that and get everything up to date with these sewage tanks, right? So that this can give safe sanitation to about 1,000 plus households, okay? Okay, this is less than what cities spend on highways, overpasses. Again, this is less than what cities spend on highway overpasses, okay? Alabama has over 600 million in unspent water and sewer funding. What y'all gonna do with it? Are y'all? That's why they said that they civil rights. That's why they were able to get that, because these people basic rights were being denied. Okay, that's why it came up under the civil rights agreement. It was definitely a racial issue. Okay, you got it, but you're not doing it. Why would you sit there and let your county stink like that? Y'all know better than that. Y'all know better than that. We got to do better in America, baby. We got to do better in America. Okay, so those are just some of the things, right? That's some of the things that you guys can do. You got it. The whole system has it. Y'all just know that these stories don't never really get to us like that, right? So who cares? It's happening in your neck of the woods. Who cares? Just let the people funk out. I want to stop and say thank you to the news for airing this. You guys are great. These are stories like this that matters. I want to say thank you to the nonprofits who stepped in and was giving funding to help out. You understand what I'm saying? Because the people needed it. Who would want to live like that? Who would want to live like that, y'all? I don't care if you're poor or rich. Nobody wants to live like that. And that's very, very wrong, right? So that is my that's my commentary on that, guys. I hope that you get what I'm saying from the heart. I hope this message blesses you somehow. I would love for my audience who watching this to please go and look up Lowndes County on YouTube and look up the sewage problem in Lowndes County. Guys, look it up. Look it up. It'll really touch your heart with what some of the people have to say. You understand what I'm saying? We get busy, we get numb. You know how life go, and that develops hardened hearts. But we must realize people be going through things that we take for granted. We take for granted going to sit on that toilet, flush, wash hands, going on about your business. You understand what I'm saying? We take for granted walking outside and you ain't got no sewer junk there. We take these things for granted. Why? Because we expect them. We expect to be taken care of as residents. We expect that we shouldn't walk out. If we saw that right now today, girl, everybody be calling 911, 311, 211. Y'all need to come do something. You understand what I'm saying? And we are spoiled as a people. We expect that. We expect it. And these people have been suffering this a while. And this is an absolute no-no. It's a no-no. And all the organizations I just named, you guys know better than that. Y'all know better than that. Let's not make America great. Let's not have an America that we can believe in, hope that we can believe in. All these little slogans sound good. How about our tagline say, it's about damn time? Like Arlen Hamilton say. Have y'all ever read her book, Arlen Hamilton? Somehow we need to develop that and do that. That's just like me. That's why I like TCLN. That's why I put it up. That's why I created it. I like the news. Now, when I was young, I hated it. I ain't gonna lie. I hated the news. I didn't even know how much effect the news had on me. Baby, my grandmother was a news person. Baby, listen, in the morning time, CBS. In the evening time, all the news. Baby, at nighttime, all the news. CNN. I remember Reagan and politics and all this stuff. And I remember one time my grandmother asked me, she said, why you don't never sit in here with me and want to watch TV? Now, you know, back in the day, ain't no such thing as talking back, right? You get popped in your mouth. So I just said, I don't know. In my mind, I said, because all you do is watch the news. But, you know, of course, I ain't going to talk back like that, right? But when I became an adult and I went to school for journalism, they tried to keep me from a degree. They got jealous, boo, tried to throw me out of college, keep me from the degree. Yes, over there at the University of North Texas. I'm going to put them suckers on blast. And then they came back and did a fake apology because they got caught lying and got caught deceiving, and they didn't want to have a lawsuit. So, but anyway, I never forgot the knowledge. I never forgot the times of my grandmother being an entrepreneur and making everything in her home and watching the news all the time. And even though as a kid I hated it, I never understood that I would grow to love it. And I never understood that I would one day build something of it. And that's how I came up with TCLN Network, the Creative Leadership Network. Because I thought a lot of times we watch news, we got people who do commentary, we got people who speak about the issues and give you their input, but we rarely have people who educate you on news. And I wanted to make something of that because I thought, why not take something in the news and just make it out of educational content? You understand what I'm saying? That way you'll have insight and information and understanding. So when you go watch the news, that's why I broke down the DOJ, right? Because a lot of times we hear the word DOJ, and we know it's Department of Justice, but we really don't know much about it. We just know what everybody's saying. That's why I did a breakdown of who they are, what they do, and the agencies that operate up under them, and their power and their influence. And that's why I did these news shows, so that I can show you this is DOJ in real time. You understand what I'm saying? In real time. So you will see these are the kind of things that they handle, whether it's antitrust, whether it's dealing with civil rights and the power to say yay or nay. Also dealing with, and I'm gonna leave you with this, my next show coming up, I'm gonna do that right now for you. So you're gonna click on that next video. I'm gonna be talking about Maureen Comey, because you know she was fired. Now, if you don't know who Maureen Comey is, she the one handled the Epstein, you know, the federal prosecutor, Epstein, Ghislaine, and Diddy cases, right? So that's coming up next, guys, because I want you to remember now, there's a lot of power in our country, and it can be used for good, or it could be something that may not be good for us. But we at least need to be educated so we'll know what's happening. Gone are the times where we just sit back and hear the news and say, that's their problem, honey, we going to work. Because every policy, every law, everything affects you as a human being, whether you know it or not. Whether you vote or not, whether you agree or not, whether you want it or not, and whether you care or not. At the end of the day, all of this stuff affects your life. And that's why TCLN Network is right here. It's right here to make sure you have a home that you can come home to, and that you can learn and grow, and that you can be thankful for news. I'm thankful for them reporters. I'm thankful for the news. Some of that news has changed since I was a kid. It's more gossip, more this, more that. When I grew up with news, I grew up with the giants. So I grew up with the best people in the game. You understand what I'm saying? These were the investigators. These were the reporters. These are people who did the biggest cases, and they did the what you call professional reporting. Today, everybody reporting, honey, and it's a lot of gossip, swayed information, swayed news, what team you're gonna be on, swayed information. But back then, it's not that they didn't have their opinions, they were human. But they knew how to deal professionally when it came to journalism and reporting. Now, I personally am not a reporter, or am I a journalist? But I know how to do research. I know how to bring you the facts. My job over here is that when you're watching that news, I take the things that are important, that deal in my lane. I don't try to do everybody's news. I don't want every news story, but that deal in my lane, that I feel that can be helpful to people in this world and this America, okay? You guys have a blessed day. Check out the next story. It's right there at the end, guys. You have a good one, okay?
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top.
Yo, no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving boulders. Now we ain't getting posterized, we out here making posters, and we ain't got nothing to hide. We move forward like soldiers.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top.